What's up, RK team? It's Avi, and we're back at it again with another macroeconomics lesson. Today, we're going to be covering the goods market and the components of GDP. So let's get into it. First, let's start with the components of GDP in a closed economy. A closed economy is an economy which has no trade. So over here, we have C plus I plus G. C stands for consumption. This is what you, me, and everyone else purchases. Then we have investment. This covers investments in new houses, machines, or factories. Then we have government spending. This includes the federal, state, or local governments buying goods or services. Now, let's zoom in on consumption since it's the largest chunk of GDP. So first, we have autonomous consumption, which is denoted by CO. This is the absolute basic amount of consumption a person will have, even if their income is zero. So this is what people will buy, even if they have no income. Then we have MPC, which is also denoted as C1, and that stands for marginal propensity to consume. This is how much more people will spend with each extra dollar of their disposable income. So let's look at this with an example. Let's say I made one extra dollar and I spend zero point 0.8 of it. So I spend 80 cents on my any consumption. That means my marginal propensity to consume is 0.8. Because for every dollar, I spend 80 cents on it on my consumption. Then we have YD, or your disposable income. Your disposable income is your actual income that you use in your daily life, which means it's your income minus the taxes you have to pay, because your taxes are not part of your consumption. Now, let's discuss equilibrium output and the multiplier effect. So equilibrium output is where total production equals to total demand. Later, we're going to look at it in more detail. Then we have the multiplier effect. This is the factor by which an initial increase in spending leads to a larger overall increase in GDP. So how a little bit of increase in the spending in an economy overall with the cycle leads to an overall increase in GDP. Now, we're going to look at the equilibrium output formula. Now, this formula may seem long, but trust me, it's very simple. And this is the formula that you're going to have to use in your problem sets. So over here, we have CO, which is survival consumption, or as we already saw, autonomous consumption. So remember that autonomous consumption is the same thing as survival consumption. It's another word for it. Then CI, I already told you guys, is MPC, or marginal propensity to consume. Then you have your income and your taxes, which together consist of your disposable income. So Y minus T is the formula for disposable income. Then you have your investment and your government spending, which in most questions will be exogenously given. This means that it will just be given in the question and you have to take I as I and G as G, or they will give the numbers to you. Now, we can look at this example using a graph. The 45-degree line in the first graph is represents total production. The flatter ZZ line shows that as income rises, spending also rises, but at a slower rate due to savings. As you can see in the second graph, where your income is increasing by a large amount when your ZZ is shifting up. Now, the equilibrium point here is where the production line and the demand line intersects, which is point A in the first graph. Now, we're going to talk about the IS relation, or where investment equals saving. It states that the total savings in an economy, private and public, must equal total investments. Now, what is private and public savings? Private savings is your income minus your taxes, which means your disposable income, minus consumption. What you have left over in your income after you have purchased everything you need is your private saving. Because after consumption, whatever you have left, you save. Now, public saving is your taxes minus government spending in the economy. What the government spends, minus what the government earns. Now, when your taxes is greater than the government spending, the government is running a budget surplus, which means is they're making more than they're spending. So public saving is positive. However, when taxes is less than government spending, it means they are spending more on the economy than they are earning. So the government is running a budget deficit. So the public saving is negative. Now, this is the equation for the IS relation. So S stands for savings, then we have I for investment, and then government spending and taxes to account for the surplus or deficit that the government will have. Now, let's look at the multiplier effect in more detail. I already explained to you guys that there's a slight increase in spending, which leads to an overall increase in GDP. And how does that work? So let's say the government spends more. There's a bit more government spending into the economy. And what happens because of that? Demand increases because more people have income to spend on consumption. Now, businesses produce more because of this in order to meet the growing demand, which means they have to hire more workers. When they hire more workers, there's workers who earn more, which means that they spend more, which boosts demand again. So you can see this leads to a cycle of increased GDP. And the cycle keeps repeating, but with slightly smaller impacts each round. So at the start, it leads to a really big increase in GDP, but then throughout the cycle, it gets less and less and less. Now, we're going to talk about the final concept in this session, which is the paradox of saving. Though it may seem like saving is great, if everyone tries to save more, it can actually hurt the economy. And how is this possible? So, let's say that people are spending less, which means that people are saving more. This means that the demand falls because if I'm saving more money, I am spending less of it on my consumption. So demand falls, which in turn leads to production falling. Because why would suppliers produce something that isn't being asked for? When production falls, overall income also falls. So in the end, total savings end up decreasing anyways. So that was all for your lesson 2. I hope you guys understood everything. And if you didn't, my DMs are always open. And I hope you guys liked it. See you later for session 3.